Dear learners, welcome back to WSE English True Stories, where learning English becomes an unforgettable adventure. Today, I invite you to travel with me into the heart of America's military tradition, to a place that has shaped not just soldiers, but leaders of a nation. This is the story of West Point, the United States Military Academy. West Point is not simply a school. It is a crucible, a forge where young men and women are tested by discipline, shaped by hardship, and transformed into leaders who carry the weight of a country on their shoulders. From its granite walls have marched presidents, generals, astronauts, and visionaries. And behind every name is a story of courage, struggle, and sacrifice. But this is not just about battles and wars. It is about the human spirit, the courage to face overwhelming challenges, the resilience to stand again after defeat, and the belief that honor and duty are worth every sacrifice. For English learners, this journey will not only expand your vocabulary and sharpen your listening skills, but it will also touch your heart, inspire your determination, and remind you of the values that connect all of us: discipline, honor, and perseverance. If you would like to support our work, you are welcome to like, comment, share, or join us. Your support means a lot and helps us keep going. So, get ready for a powerful journey of history, resilience, and inspiration. Let's begin the story of West Point. At the turn of the 19th century, the United States was still a fragile young republic. The revolution had been won, but the future was uncertain. The country stretched only along the Atlantic coast, surrounded by threats from powerful European empires. Britain still held forts on American soil, Spain controlled vast territories to the south and west, and Native American nations fiercely resisted expansion. The idea of a secure and independent America was far from guaranteed. The Continental Army that had carried George Washington to victory in the Revolution had disbanded. What remained was a small, scattered force with little training, weak organization, and almost no professional tradition. Officers came and went. Many had learned war through trial and error, not through disciplined study. Washington himself had warned Congress that without a permanent institution to train future leaders, the nation would always be vulnerable. The answer came in 1802, when President Thomas Jefferson signed the law establishing the United States Military Academy at West Point. The site was chosen carefully. West Point, a rocky plateau high above the Hudson River in New York, had been a key fortification during the Revolutionary War. Benedict Arnold's betrayal there had once threatened the American cause. Now, the same ground would be reborn as the foundation of a new ideal, to forge professional officers who could defend the young republic. In its early years, the academy was humble. A few wooden buildings, scarce supplies, and a handful of teachers greeted the first cadets. Yet from these modest beginnings rose an institution that would eventually rival Europe's oldest military schools. Its first superintendent, Colonel Sylvanus Thayer, known as the father of West Point, introduced strict discipline, rigorous engineering studies, and a moral code that would become legendary. The America of that era was full of contradictions. It was a nation of liberty, yet slavery still existed. It was a land of opportunity, yet constantly divided by political quarrels. In this world, West Point became a symbol of stability, order, and service above self. It offered young men, often from modest families, the chance to rise not through wealth or birth, but through discipline, honor, and ability. When you imagine those early cadets, picture them drilling in worn uniforms, their shoes muddy from the Hudson's banks, their textbooks borrowed and sometimes tattered. Yet inside them burned a spirit of ambition. They knew they were pioneers, part of something larger than themselves. The academy was not just teaching them how to fight. It was shaping their character, preparing them to carry the fate of a growing nation. And soon, that nation would need them. For the storms of war were never far away. The promise of West Point was great, but the reality was harsh. From its earliest days, the academy faced suspicion and criticism. Many Americans feared that a permanent military school would create an elite class of officers, far removed from ordinary citizens. Wasn't America supposed to be different from Europe, free from kings and standing armies? Critics called it a dangerous experiment, a place that might nurture ambition instead of service. Inside the walls, the cadets themselves struggled. Life at West Point was demanding, even punishing. The days began before dawn with roll call and drill. Cadets marched in formation under rain or snow, their backs straight, their boots worn. They memorized mathematics, engineering, and military science by lamplight, often until their eyes blurred with exhaustion. Discipline was relentless. A single misstep in conduct could mean dismissal. Letters from home reminded them of comfort and freedom far away, but at West Point, there was no escape from the iron routine. The academy's strict code was not just about rules. It was about forging character. Yet many young men faltered under the pressure. Some left in despair, while others broke the rules and were expelled. For those who remained, the greatest challenge was internal, the battle between comfort and discipline, self-interest and duty. At the same time, the young republic itself began to face new dangers. In 1812, just a decade after West Point's founding, war with Britain once again shook the nation. The conflict exposed both strengths and weaknesses. West Point graduates proved their value as engineers and officers, building fortifications, leading troops, and earning respect. Yet the war also revealed how small and unprepared the Army remained. After the War of 1812, debates raged. Should America expand the academy? Should military education take a larger role in national defense? Or should the country return to its traditional suspicion of standing armies? These questions shadowed every step of West Point's growth. For the cadets who marched along the Hudson, the challenge was not only personal but symbolic. Could this academy survive criticism, suspicion, and the weight of expectations? Could its graduates prove that military leaders could serve a republic faithfully, without turning into tyrants? This tension shaped West Point's identity. It was not just about teaching young men to fight battles. It was about proving that honor, integrity, and duty to the nation could be stronger than ambition or personal gain. That was the emerging problem, the test that would define West Point's legacy, not only to train soldiers, but to forge leaders who placed country above self. Imagine yourself standing there as a cadet. The river glitters below, the stone walls rise around you, and the bugle calls echo in the cold morning air. Would you endure the hardship? Would you accept the weight of duty, even if it meant giving up comfort, and perhaps even your life? The next stage of the journey would bring these questions into sharp reality, as America's greatest conflicts loomed ever closer. The academy grew slowly, step by step, its discipline and ideals tested against the turbulence of a restless nation. By the 1820s and 1830s, West Point had begun to earn respect. Graduates were not only building forts but also designing bridges, roads, and canals. They became the engineers of a young America, proving that knowledge and service could walk hand in hand. Yet behind every achievement, there was still struggle. Life inside West Point was relentless. Cadets lived under constant watch. They marched, studied, and trained as though the world outside did not exist. There were no luxuries, no distractions. The academy demanded obedience and precision in every movement. Even friendships were tested by strict rules. Cadets could be punished for the smallest disobedience, and sometimes a single failure in academics meant expulsion. But out of this pressure came unity. Cadets learned that hardship was best endured together. They leaned on each other during sleepless nights before examinations, whispered encouragement during grueling drills, and carried one another through moments of despair. Bonds were forged that would last a lifetime, bonds that would one day be tested on bloody battlefields. Beyond the walls of West Point, the nation entered a period of expansion and tension. America pushed westward, seizing new lands, often at the expense of native nations. This created a demand for officers trained in engineering, surveying, and military command. West Point graduates were sent to the frontiers, where they faced danger, isolation, and the challenge of applying their lessons in the wilderness. It was during this time that the Academy faced one of its first great trials of loyalty, the Mexican-American War, 1846 to 1848. Many of the young officers who marched into Mexico were fresh from West Point's halls. They carried their books of tactics, their discipline, and their hunger to prove themselves. In the mountains of Mexico, under burning sun and amid deadly fire, West Pointers distinguished themselves. Men like Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, and Thomas Stonewall Jackson, names that would later dominate American history, first tested their courage there. The war revealed the power of the Academy's training. These officers built bridges under fire, led charges against fortified positions, and earned the respect of their men. Yet the war also revealed a darker struggle. Many cadets returned home with a sense of glory, but also with the haunting memory of violence and death. They had learned that the price of leadership was heavy, and that the ideals of honor and duty were often paid for in blood. Inside West Point, whispers of division began to grow. The issue of slavery, which divided the nation, also divided cadets and officers. Some came from southern plantations, others from northern towns, and their loyalties would one day clash. For now, discipline and the Academy's code kept them united. But beneath the surface, the seeds of future conflict were already planted. For the young cadets, the first journey was not only about enduring West Point's rigid system. It was about carrying that system into the uncertain world. They learned that leadership was more than issuing commands. It was about responsibility, sacrifice, and the willingness to stand firm when others faltered. Imagine one of those cadets, just 20 years old, writing in his journal by the dim light of a lantern. His hands tremble from fatigue, his uniform smells of sweat and dust, and outside his window the Hudson winds whisper through the night. He dreams of honor, of proving himself in the service of his country. But he also wonders, will he have the strength when the moment comes? That question would soon be answered. For America was moving toward its greatest crisis, the Civil War, and West Point's sons would find themselves on opposite sides of the battlefield. The middle of the 19th century brought an earthquake to America's soul. The issue of slavery, long pushed aside, now tore the nation apart. Every debate in Congress, every election, and every law seemed to sharpen the divide. Families were split. States threatened secession. The United States was moving toward a storm that no one could escape. At West Point, this storm was felt in the quiet dormitories and parade grounds. Cadets studied side by side, ate in the same mess hall, and drilled on the same fields. Yet in their hearts, many carried different loyalties. Some were sons of Southern planters, others of Northern farmers and merchants. Their friendships were genuine, but fragile. They could not know that one day, those same friendships would be shattered by the thunder of cannon fire. In 1861, the Civil War erupted. The Union and the Confederacy called upon officers to lead their armies. And where did they turn? To West Point. Suddenly, classmates who had once marched in formation together now found themselves enemies on the battlefield. It was perhaps the greatest test of West Point's legacy. Could an institution dedicated to unity, honor, and service survive a war where its own graduates fought against one another? Robert E. Lee, one of West Point's most brilliant graduates, faced the terrible decision of loyalty. Though offered command of the Union Army by President Lincoln, Lee chose instead to follow his home state of Virginia into the Confederacy. On the other side, Ulysses S. Grant, another West Pointer, took command of Union forces. Both men, trained by the same institution, would lead armies in the bloodiest conflict America had ever seen. The Civil War became West Point's crucible. Nearly every major battle featured its graduates as commanding officers. At Antietam, Gettysburg, Vicksburg, and Appomattox, the strategies, victories, and failures all bore the stamp of West Point training. The Academy had succeeded in producing leaders, but those leaders now tore each other apart. For the cadets who remained at West Point during the war, the Academy was a ghostly place. The sound of drums still echoed, but the numbers were fewer. Letters arrived with news of classmates killed or captured. The shadow of the war hung heavy over the granite walls. Many wondered if the Academy would even survive. Yet the war also became a turning point. Out of the ashes of conflict came proof that the Academy was indispensable. The nation had relied on West Point-trained officers, whether North or South, because there was no substitute for the discipline, knowledge, and leadership it had instilled. The tragedy of brothers fighting brothers also gave the Academy a painful lesson, that loyalty to country must rise above loyalty to region, and that service must never be divided by personal gain. When the war finally ended in 1865, West Point faced a broken, weary America. Cities were in ruins. Families mourned their dead. The nation's wounds seemed beyond healing. But in this moment, the Academy began to rebuild, not only itself, but the spirit of the United States. Its graduates were called upon to lead in reconstruction, to restore order, and to carry forward the belief that honor and unity were still possible. The Civil War was West Point's greatest crisis, and also its turning point. From then on, the Academy's mission became sharper, deeper, and more sacred. It was no longer just a school of tactics. It was a place where the meaning of loyalty and service was burned into the soul. Picture for a moment the silence of the Hudson after the war, as the sun sets over the parade ground. The cadets drill in their gray uniforms, but their steps echo with memory. They march not only for themselves, but for the thousands who never returned. Out of tragedy, West Point had found a new purpose, to serve as the guardian of a reunited nation. After the Civil War, the shadow of sacrifice lingered over West Point. The Academy had witnessed what divided loyalty could do to a nation, and it would not forget. Every stone wall, every morning drill, every line of the cadet code now carried a deeper weight, the choice between personal desire and national duty. As the United States moved into the late 19th and early 20th centuries, new conflicts called West Pointers once again to the front. The Spanish-American War of 1898, fought in Cuba and the Philippines, proved that America had become a global power. Who commanded the armies? Who led the fleets? Once again, the answer was West Point men. Yet war is never just glory. It is sacrifice. The names of West Point graduates filled casualty lists, their graves spread across distant fields. They had chosen the harder path, duty over comfort, service over safety. The true climax of West Point's story came in the 20th century, with the two world wars. The nation's survival once again depended on its leaders. In World War I, men like General John J. Pershing, a West Point graduate, led American forces into the brutal trenches of Europe. He carried the Academy's lessons of discipline and strategy into a world torn apart by machine guns and gas attacks. Thousands of West Point-trained officers guided young soldiers through mud, fire, and fear. But it was World War II that tested West Point as never before. In the 1940s, its graduates stood at the crossroads of history. General Dwight D. Eisenhower, class of 1915, became Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe. He faced the ultimate choice: to send young men into the storm of D-Day, knowing many would not return. His steady hand and calm resolve carried the Allies across the beaches of Normandy and toward victory. In the Pacific, General Douglas MacArthur, another West Point son, made his stand. From the desperate defense of the Philippines to his triumphant return, he embodied both brilliance and controversy. Love him or hate him, MacArthur symbolized the unyielding determination that West Point had drilled into his soul. For the cadets back at the Academy, the war years were charged with intensity. They knew that graduation no longer meant only parades and ceremonies. It meant combat. It meant sacrifice. Many studied under the shadow of fear, writing letters to families with words they hoped would not be their last. Imagine the weight of that knowledge, to walk across the stage at West Point, diploma in hand, and know that within weeks you might be walking into a battlefield. And yet, they accepted it. Because West Point had always been about choice, the choice to serve, the choice to sacrifice, the choice to place the nation above self. The climax of West Point's conflict was not just on foreign battlefields. It was in the hearts of its graduates, who faced the eternal question, will I give everything I have, even my life, for a cause greater than myself? The answer, time and again, was yes. From the frozen hills of Korea to the jungles of Vietnam, from the deserts of Iraq to the mountains of Afghanistan, West Point's graduates carried forward that legacy of choice and sacrifice. Many never returned. Their names are etched in memorials, their memory honored by cadets who still march with the same gray uniforms, the same code, the same solemn promise. In these sacrifices lies the true climax of West Point's story. The Academy is not only a school of tactics or engineering. It is a school of the spirit, a place where young men and women learn the meaning of choice, that the greatest victory is not in personal achievement, but in service and sacrifice for others. And through that choice, West Point's legacy was secured. Yet, sacrifice also brought victories that would change the course of history. From the crucible of sacrifice emerged triumphs that shaped not only America, but the wider world. The graduates of West Point had not only fought wars, they had defined moments of destiny. Their victories were measured not just in battles won, but in the preservation of freedom, the defense of democracy, and the building of a nation that would stand as a global power. Consider the story of General Dwight D. Eisenhower. A quiet cadet during his years at West Point, often remembered for his smile rather than his ambition, he would rise to become Supreme Commander in World War II. It was Eisenhower who coordinated the greatest military operation in history, D-Day. The victory in Europe bore his mark, his calm leadership, his ability to unite allies with different languages, cultures, and ambitions. His success was not only military, it was diplomatic, moral, and deeply human. Later, as President of the United States, Eisenhower embodied West Point's ideals of service and discipline, guiding America through the tense early years of the Cold War. Then there was General Omar Bradley, another son of West Point, remembered as the GI's general. Known for his humility and compassion, Bradley commanded millions of soldiers across Europe. His leadership proved that strength could be combined with humanity, that honor was not only about courage in battle but about caring for the men under one's command. West Point's influence stretched beyond war. Its graduates became engineers, explorers, astronauts, and statesmen. They built bridges that connected cities, railroads that spanned the continent, and fortifications that defended harbors. In the 20th century, they helped design rockets and satellites, leading America into the space age. The Academy had become more than a military institution, it was a forge of national leadership. Inside its granite walls, the Academy also evolved. It opened its doors to African American cadets, beginning with Henry Ocean Flipper in 1877, who overcame prejudice and isolation to become the first black graduate. Later, in 1976, West Point welcomed women into the Corps of Cadets, breaking barriers and expanding its vision of leadership. Each step forward was a victory of a different kind, victories of equality, resilience, and progress. For the cadets themselves, the greatest achievement was often personal. To survive West Point's rigorous 4 years was itself a triumph. Every graduate had endured sleepless nights, grueling drills, and endless exams. They had marched across the plain in rain and snow, stood at attention until their legs trembled, and faced failures that tested their will. And in the end, they emerged not only as officers, but as men and women transformed. These victories, on battlefields, in society, and within the human spirit, gave West Point its true power. The Academy's success was not in creating perfect soldiers, but in shaping leaders who could carry responsibility in times of crisis. Pause for a moment and reflect, what is victory to you? Is it winning a contest, achieving a personal goal, or something more? For West Point, victory was not about glory. It was about service, endurance, and the quiet pride of knowing that sacrifices were not in vain. And yet, even as the Academy celebrated achievements, it looked toward the future. For West Point's story was never about resting on past victories, it was about preparing the next generation to face challenges still unseen. The legacy of these victories leads us to the heart of the Academy's meaning, its lessons for all time, carried forward in its traditions and in the lives of those it has shaped. West Point's story is not only a chronicle of wars and victories. It is the tale of how a nation chose to shape its leaders, and how those leaders carried forward values that would guide America through its darkest hours. The Academy has endured criticism, hardship, and even the agony of seeing its graduates fight on opposite sides of a civil war. Yet through every trial, it emerged with a deeper sense of purpose, to create leaders of character. The lessons of West Point are written not just in history books, but in the very lives of those who passed through its gates. Each cadet learns that leadership is not about power or prestige, but about responsibility. It is about standing firm when others falter, about making choices that may cost comfort, safety, or even life itself. That is why the Cadet Honor Code, a cadet will not lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do, remains at the heart of the Academy. It is simple, yet profound, a compass to guide a lifetime of service. The legacy is also symbolic. West Point represents the belief that democracy needs not only laws and leaders, but defenders who are educated, disciplined, and morally grounded. Its graduates remind us that freedom is not self-sustaining. It requires guardians willing to sacrifice for ideals larger than themselves. For English learners listening to this story, the message extends beyond military history. The Academy's discipline speaks to anyone striving to master a skill, to overcome difficulty, to transform challenge into achievement. Just as a cadet learns through failure, struggle, and persistence, so too can each of us grow stronger through the hardships we face. Ask yourself, what is your West Point? What challenge in your life requires discipline, sacrifice, and perseverance? It may not be a battlefield or a military academy, but each person has a plane to march, a test to endure, a choice to make. The values of honor, resilience, and service are not limited to soldiers, they belong to us all. This is the legacy of West Point. Not only the leaders it has given the United States, but the timeless reminder that greatness is forged in struggle, and that true leadership is born from service. From the stone walls along the Hudson River to the countless battlefields of history, West Point's voice still echoes: duty, honor, country. These are not just words. They are a way of life. Dear learners, as we end our journey through the story of West Point, let us pause and reflect. What began as a simple military academy became something far greater, a forge of leaders, a guardian of national ideals, and a living reminder that sacrifice is the price of freedom. From Grant and Lee to Eisenhower and MacArthur, from Pershing to Bradley, the Academy's graduates carried the hopes of a nation into history. Some returned in triumph, others never returned at all. Yet all of them left a legacy that continues to inspire. One of West Point's most famous graduates, General Douglas MacArthur, once said in his farewell address to the cadets, "Duty, honor, country." Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be. These words echo across generations. They remind us that leadership is not measured by power, but by service. So I ask you, what are the words that guide your life? What ideals shape the choices you make each day? Perhaps West Point's story has given you a chance to reflect on your own path, your own discipline, and your own dreams. If this story touched you, share it. Carry forward its message of courage and service. Support our work by liking, commenting, or subscribing, not just for us, but to help keep alive stories that inspire learning, resilience, and hope. And remember, your journey in English, like West Point's journey in history, is not easy, but every struggle, every challenge, brings you closer to strength and victory. Until next time, keep learning, keep believing, and keep marching toward your own dreams. Goodbye for now.